Welcome everybody to the Corporate Services Committee meeting, 18th of March already, 2025. Peter, I'll hand you over to the prayer.
Thank you, Chair. Almighty and ever-living God, in whose hands are the rights and hopes of all people, look graciously upon us who govern. Guide us so that our counsels may be wise and our decisions are just. Amen.
Amen. Right, I'll call for apologies. You got any apologies? Brett Cummins?
Councillor Cummins will be half an hour late, so he may miss this meeting. I'll put an apology in for Councillor Cummins for this meeting.
Got a seconder for that? Yep. Yeah, Peter and Andy. Declarations of interest? None. Public forums, petitions and deputations?
None today.
None today. Confirmation of the minutes. The Corporate Services Committee meeting, 18th of February 2025. Is there any corrections to the minutes? Over mover?
I'll be happy to move that those minutes are a true and correct record.
Excellent. I'll second that. In favour?
Aye.
Matters arising from those minutes.
Talk to that. Basically, the FDC return. I had a couple of questions for PwC when they finally gave me the actual information. I've gone back to them, just clarified a couple of things that they had in their letter that they send the IRD for the FBT. And I had a couple of questions about the calculation. So unfortunately, we've been a bit tied up in what they call March Madness, the PwC world. Things are pretty busy at the moment, but it's all basically sorted at this next file. So that's that one.
That's on the matters arising.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Sorry, jump the gun.
Yep.
So, okay, the action list. Yep. All right. So we need a mover for the action list.
Yep, I'll be happy to move that the action list be received.
Seconder? Andy Campbell. Chair's report. Basically, it's pretty much reiterating what Peter's just said. It's about the FPT, just an update on that, and really it's ongoing. So that's the Chair's report. Nothing really to report on that. So that's the Chair's report. Can I have a mover for that, please?
I'll move the Chair's report be accepted.
And Chris, seconder.
Through the Chair, there was one item on the action list, which was item 2.
Yes.
Which were the paper that's regarding the provide the options for the catastrophe fund, and I believe that's going to happen in April.
Yes, that's committee meeting on the April 25th. Yep, that's correct.
Noted.
General business. No general business? Okay, I'll declare that meeting closed.
Just like, I need to.
I'll be happy to
Sorry.
move we go into public school.
Yep, so I move we'll go into public excluded. And what do we got here? Confirm. To move that public excluded from the following parts of proceedings. This meeting, namely agenda items 9 to 10, all inclusive, that Darryl Liu, Peter Miller and Joe Field are permitted to remain in the meeting after the public have been excluded to acknowledge the subjects. This acknowledge will be of assistance in relation to the matters to be discussed.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if we could make some additions to that list, please. Consistent to what I said just before was, we can extend that invitation to Stuart March, and you might want to consider extending the invitation to be present with Brian as well.
Okay. Yep.
Yep.
I'll move the second then.
Yep.
Yep.
I'll leave that.
And I'll send that to Chantal Wells, please.
Yep.
Yep. Facebook. It's my pleasure today to welcome Graham McGlynn, who's our new independent risk and assurance chair. Graham we're very fortunate to have the services of Graham here today for the next 3 years. In fact, Graham comes from a great background. He's been an auditor and represents six other councils throughout the country presently, so on a risk and assurance basis. So welcome, Graham. And
Thank you.
Look forward to you chairing the meeting and being with us here.
Thank you.
3 years.
Item 2 on the agenda is apologies. Any apologies apart from, did we have one councillor potentially
Yes.
running a bit late?
Councillor Cummings, I believe, will be joining the meeting later, so we apologize till he attends.
Thank you, Peter, for seconding. All those in favour? Carried. Declarations of interest. It's important to note that I have filed a declarations of interest statement with the council, mainly noting the fact that I'm on a number of other audit and risk committees around the country there, and that is available, I believe, for public record. Not been advised of any, item 4, any public forum, petitions or deputations. Item 5 is the public minutes, and those are on pages 2 through 5 of your papers. Are there any matters of factual accuracy that anyone wishes to raise? Secondly, any items arising from those minutes that are not covered in the papers for today? We have a recommendation to the committee that we confirm the minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting held 19th of November 2024 a true and correct record. I've got someone to move that was present. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, if any? No abstentions noted. Thank you. Carried. We have actions list. We have just shift my water so we don't have a flood as I turn my papers. And that was reference ACT 0018 from August 24, was to present a paper on the next year's internal audit program schedule. And I think that was coming from you, Gavin.
Yes.
Any comment on that?
Mr. Chair, that will come up in a session later.
Thank you. So that item will be dealt to. The recommendation is that the committee receives the report. Do I have a mover? Peter, you'll move in that direction.
I'll be happy to remove that and remove item 1 once it's been dealt with today.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder on that? Thank you. All those in favour? Against, if any? No abstentions noted. Carried. Chair's report. That's me. Right. Well, I've had my induction yesterday. I'm really looking forward to working with the council and bringing my experience of one other regional council and a unitary authority to the table. My approach is very much steady as it goes and not rock the boat and change things too quickly, and have a look and see and learn as I get to know the organisation. Organisation's got a really challenging area with low population and a very large geographical area, and a lot of hazards, particularly coming from Mother Nature. So it will be interesting and challenging, and I look forward to renewing earlier routes with the West Coast, although in all fairness, probably more into the lower Tasman area, with my father having been a teacher at Gown Bridge and Murchison in the past, and me spending an awful lot of my early time in that part of the world. Can't claim to be a coaster, technically born in Canterbury. So, but I certainly have some strong ties with the area. So looking forward to it. Next item is general business. I'm not aware of any general business having been notified.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I failed in my welcome Stuart Much from EY, the auditor. So welcome along today, Stuart. Note that.
Yes, apologies to Stuart. I should have picked up on that on the way through. And you're welcome to fully engage and to discuss matters that you feel appropriate relating to audit matters. So we move now on to item 9, which are reports, and that's management's responses to the your reports that you have issued coming out of last year's audit. And we've got two papers there, a report on findings and an audit plan. And perhaps maybe I just pass the floor to you, Stuart, to talk us through the key items.
You want to account, or do you want me to dive?
We're
both Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.
We can cover each other.
Stuart 1 and Stuart 2 officially.
Mr. Chair.
Stuart, Jim.
And councillors. So really pleased to see that we have managed report in draft from EY for the annual report for the period that ended the 30th of June 24, and this is covering this. Now, this is a little while ago, but nothing in the audit report that my colleague, that Stuart's prepared, our auditor, is new from what was previously already described to us. And what we do have the opportunity now to do is to work through that and actually detail what we've done to either take action or what we will do to take action in the future. So, Mr. Chair, if that's okay, I'll just go through this with a level of detail. So, as I say, this is for the period closed at 30th of June. So it's a little while on. No issues there, because we've already taken a lot of action because Stuart's already previously detailed that. We do accept full the recommendations from EY, and we have prepared a draft response against each of those recommendations. So with that moving on, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'll come back to the recommendations at the end of this. So say that this is a great opportunity to reflect on where we're at. We do have some areas of high risk, and there are 4 recommendations that Stuart and team have made against our processes that need significant improvement, 6 against areas where we need substantial, and 6 where we need some improvement. I'll go through the attachments separately in a second. I'll just cover off the basic details to start. Of those major points, rate setting was one of the key elements that came out of that, and that was quite a public environment for us for 23-24, and significant improvement, as council will be aware, has been made subsequent to that in terms of how we've actually set the rates, and that includes for the rates setting process for this year. And councillors will be aware of those improvements and the fact that we were largely very successful in setting those rates. We've put in a lot of checks and balances, and we're actually picked that up in a later paper as well. One of the other major issues, and council will be aware of this also, is our valuation of our assets. As you appreciate, in the 22-23 annual report period, our assets increased in value quite considerably, from approximately 120 to about $180 million. One of the things that Stuart and the team pointed out is that we need to get some more specific information to support those valuations more appropriately, more evidence-based going forward. We do have a plan of work in place for that. We had done some work for this year, but it wasn't sufficient. We just needed to get some other ducks in a row before we could actually move forward now. And we're really confident we do have a presence in place now to move forward, and we'll be working with Stuart and the team to see what we can do for the audit period ending 30th of June this year. As I say, this was picked up on last year, and last year it wasn't as mature in terms of our systems. Some of the other elements that were picked up, as you'll be aware, on the non-financial performance reporting. Now, we do run quite a robust non-performance reporting process here, and our targets as council will recall quite specific. A lot of the targets have 100%, and so if you fail one element of the performance target, it means you failed the whole thing. Now, of course, the 23-24 reporting period was using the previous performance targets, not the ones we're currently in. And so the new ones are as per our LTP, that's what they're currently in. Now, there is some system working grants and subsidies. I will hand over to Peter if that's appropriate, if we need to, on the grants and subsidies, investments, expenditure, and debt. There is an element from there you'll see also about procurement, and we'll be picking up a little bit later today. Are there any questions, councillors, at this point?
Questions? I might just make a couple of comments, particularly on the rating system, where as a regional authority, you are dependent on the information given by the territorial authorities to you, and also onto the cycle of revaluations done by QV, etc. And sometimes the timing of those can create its own inherent issues. So the ability to validate, unlike a territorial authority where you own all the data and have full access, can be a little more challenging in regionals as opposed to territorials or unitaries authorities. So I have seen the issue before, and it's something that we need to be alive to, and I've had long discussions with both Stuart and Daryl on the matter yesterday, and there's certainly been substantial steps taken there, but ultimately I will be taking a lot of interest in EY's findings in the next audit, because I am aware that this is a focus area for Stuart and his team. On the valuation of assets, too, it's a traditional issue in all local authorities, and it's been compounded somewhat in the last sort of 36 months with the advent of high inflation again, and often sector-related inflation due to supply chains coming out of COVID, resourcing and all sorts of things. So this is, again, a very difficult area, and common with many of the TAs and other local government entities that I'm involved in. So those two to me did not come as a surprise, and you're not alone. But that does not mean to say that we don't need to get on top of it all.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if I could comment here, and just to enable councillors to understand this matter. There is a relationship between this audit finding and our asset management system, because first and foremost, it's a matter of a very detailed and complete and accurate inventory of our assets, especially our flood banks. And what we actually need to do, if I put it in real terms for you, is we have to now capture the full geometry of all of our banks to a level of detail that we've not done before, to enable us to calculate volumes. But we also need to characterise the nature of the materials that make up those banks as a matter of our asset inventory. And once again, that's to a level of detail that this council's never done before, and it needs to be part of the asset management system. That we have 66 kilometres of flood bank. Okay, so that's a fair amount of characterisation and capture there. Okay, and then once we've got that information, we then need to figure out how much that material and those flood banks are worth. And that's quite complex, because as councillors around this table know, that really depends on where the material might come from and how far the cartage rates are and where the right material is. And given 23 schemes and other things across the coast, that's quite a complex bit of analysis. But that is our task, and that's something that we're setting about to do. But I do want to make sure that you understand what the task is here, and how extensive the work is, and make sure you understand the dependency or the relationship with the piece of work that you'll hear about in our operations committee, and you've been hearing about, called the asset management system. I hope that's a clear articulation of what this issue is for you. Thank you.
Councillor Cole.
Chair, would you imagine that the asset valuation would increase because now we're finding more assets that we didn't realise we owned or had? Or is was the increase mainly inflation based? Or, you know,
Can I?
going from 120 to 180?
Yeah. So firstly, what I would say is that I think that we have a fairly good understanding of where the banks that we administer are. That's the first thing, but what we don't have is the detail around the geometry of those banks.
Or new assets?
Or the new assets that are coming on in your constituency, councillor, yes. So that's the first thing. I actually give us like a B plus in terms of inventory of knowing what assets will drop, but not so high in terms of the detail around those assets. The second issue is I wouldn't automatically assume that on a new valuation that the valuation will go up. I'd reserve judgment on that and let the work go through, because that analysis could bring a whole new lens to what the valuation could be. Thank you.
I've also seen, just on that same topic, issues with riverbed movements, if changing the effectiveness of the stop banking, which can actually take us below design specs. So that is yet another complicating factor to be built in. Chair Haddock.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add to what Chair Graham and Daryl said earlier on about, it's not good that we did have these high risk categories, but I believe this was one of the other reasons this was because we had a very weak corporate services team. But I'm confident now too that as part of council's rebuild, we have a very strong corporate services staff and team, and I'm very confident going forward. The other issue which the chair actually brought up was that timing evaluations, and I don't think a lot of the public realise that the districts are revalued on a rotating cycle, district by district, over a 3-year period. So there's a very tight time frame between getting those valuations and then being able to work out that rating factor. So you can see where that come. I notice it was not a breach of the Local Government Act, but it's still, and I'm pleased we'll be able to mitigate those 4 major issues there.
Do you want to suggest we're going to do a tag team? That's okay.
That's perfectly fine. I leave the meeting in your.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one more.
Just one point before we go on, rest of the diet that we got here. Just for my understanding, there are a couple of words that people get confused with. In the auditor's lens, what is the degree of hierarchy or difference between, on page 8 there, doing the understanding of improvements required, significant and substantial, which takes the preeminence?
Look, thank you for the question. Look, essentially, within the auditor speak, you get accounting issues or performance information issues that may give rise to a qualification of your audit report. So, we have to actually make mention of the actual published audit report. And those would be, they can either be kind of a technical quirks that just come off the page in any given year, or they can be sort of matters that are sort of high, need significant improvement matters that really have been bubbling along for a long time and haven't actually been attended to. So essentially, if you've got those high risk issues, they can ultimately lead in any given year to qualification by audit report, which is the sort of, I wouldn't say it's a penalty, but it's, the mechanism that we use to, raise our concerns in regards to the reporting of council. Items that are classified as moderate or low. Low is housekeeping matters, things that actually not going to change the direction of the ship, but it's not tidy for you to kind of keep working on. Moderate, yes, you should have them on your work plan, because ultimately, if they're left unattended, they may become high risk and you don't want to move to that point. I mean, in terms of our broad report, this has to be read in consideration a couple of things. First of all, when I met with the committee and council in October, we provided a report on the actual audit of 30th of June 2024, and that was really drawing conclusions of all our work. But the report you have in front of us today really goes back and sort of looks at the specifics around how can you improve yourselves, findings, recommendations for improvement. And a lot of the matters that we identified probably arose, probably even before 23-24, probably definitely early in that financial year, simply because you went through a lot of changes within your organisation, and some of these matters have arisen, particularly around the rates, and really arose with that during the middle of the 2023 calendar year. I'm not going to go through any of the points in detail. Happy to take any questions or queries. Really, I just wanted to sort of say, I acknowledge that management have picked up these findings. They've already been working on it. They've taken the findings seriously. And not everything's going to be solved in a day. But they understand the priority of various different matters and how to put the appropriate level of resource into that. The infrastructure one is pretty hard, but it's dealing with one of the core activities of what you do in terms of those flood control assets, and it is pretty important for the organisation to have a deeper understanding of the sort of the physics, physicals, and the conditioning of the asset base. So I'm happy to take any questions or queries in regards to any of the items on there, but I'm satisfied that management are moving in the right direction. We will undertake our 30th June 2025 audit. As part of that exercise, we will come back and sort of say, have these points been moved on between the 23-24 year and the 24-25 year? Can I take questions?
Councillor, welcome, by the way.
This is a question probably more for Darryl than anyone. Stantec, are we going to keep using that? It looks like they've got a sort of a bit of a strike for you, the way they've done their audit and valuation. But it's quite important for us and rating districts that they get a clear opinion. All they've been doing is bumping interest rates sort of stuff on,
Mr. Chairman, I won't make
I
any.
honestly thought that they were doing a proper survey. That's what we were having.
Yeah, I'm not going to make any comment publicly on that. I'll just say that we have a program in place to do it at the appropriate level of detail, hopefully to satisfy audit.
I just circle back to my original comments that this council's not alone in this issue with many of these, with cost structures shifting. We've got a higher level of evidence that's now required under auditing standards, and probably rightly so. There's been quite a bit of shifting sands, and it's very difficult to isolate this into one place. It is a reasonably generic issue across the local government sector, and not just, you've got roading and territorials, you've got stop banks and issues and regionals, and so it's a bit part of symptomatic of a much bigger industry-wide issue that's sitting there, and a lot of it is because the goalposts are moving.
A lot of the rating districts would have to be thinking that we're over-insuring things. I mean, that's my biggest concern is their insurance bill and the premiums and all the rest of this agreement. And I'd hate to think that we're actually overvaluing something, because in some ways, the value of some of these flood walls should be going down as we get better rock sources and all the rest of it. They shouldn't always be going up with the cost of inflation. Because, some of these things probably started off being valued back in the 1960s when it was quite a big job. Now it's,
Yeah, there's lots of moving parts, I think, is the conclusion. Councillor?
Yeah, through the chair, like that's over 30% increase in the value of the stock banks in this last valuation. Where did they get that from?
Mr. Chairman, if I could comment. Firstly, the way we've been valuing the banks and characterising them for the past 20 or 30 years, since we were formed as a regional council, has survived audit. It is now, as the chair says, that there is a lot more greater scrutiny and a higher standard of evidential basis and valuation basis that is now being brought to bear, and fair enough, from auditors right throughout the country on all local authorities. So the goalposts have moved. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I'd say is that the valuations that are on our books at the moment are based on the best data that we have at the moment. And we now need to retest that and improve it and see where that actually goes. And as I said to Councillor Cole earlier, I don't want to prejudge that that analysis.
New Zealand, as part of the international accounting community, also is using international public sector accounting standards. So globally, these standards have been refining after audit failures in the past and with revision of what best practice looks like. And it is something that evolves. And this is all changing at both accounting standards and audit standards and engineering standards. It's happening right across the board as knowledge and basis, and what was okay in the past and probably met best practice at the time, or best practice has moved. It's a very major part of this is the goalpost moving on us, which is a challenge for a small regional council.
Just one comment through the chair. The valuations, we've asked to get a valuation of those assets, and I believe the valuation of them has taken place on the replacement valuation of those units. And I know the rating districts say, well, look, they're never going to be wiped out as a whole, but that's a totally different matter. We asked for what the valuation of the asset was, and they probably reflect the true figure on what the value of that whole entire asset is. So it'd be very unlikely the whole asset wiped out. You know, that's the first thing. So that, I think, is the beef when a lot of the rating districts are saying, well, look, we're paying an insurance levy on that total value, whereas, but, you know, we actually want to know what our total value was of that asset. And I think it probably reflects what is the replacement cost of that asset as they could see it at the moment. And like the Chief Executive said, there's a lot of work to go into actually do an assessment of what they actually are made of and through one. But that's just my comment on it. Yep. I understand that those rating districts have a concern that, you know, it'll be very unlikely a total asset would be wiped out, like a house fire where you could lose the whole house. You know, flood event, you'd probably only lose part of that asset, not a whole lot.
Which leads neatly back into insurance, which has been covered. Certainly, we've just heard in the previous meeting, the renewals process is coming up 1 November, I think, if I recall. So, and that's going to be on the radar, all these factors to give the scrutiny and making some conscious decisions about what levels of insurance we cover and why, and what is actually the right option.
Yeah, through the chair, I agree with that. That one, back up what Peter said, that premiums will be related to full valuation, so these will be mindful will be complete replacement.
Any other comments from councillors on the reports from EY this stage? I think a quick summary is that there were a fair number of findings, but there are 4 key ones which, and another 6 that were significant, were moderate. And there will be audit focus, I'm sure, coming through from that. We'll probably get some initial feedback, particularly on the key ones, I imagine, Stuart, at interim, as you're going through, as appropriate to your testing strategy. And it's certainly work in progress.
Just one other thing on the bottom, the 7 at the bottom of the 2 levels of boundary inventory between what files and stuff like. The bottom line of 2.2.5 supplement procedure.
Rock stockpiles.
I'll change it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we then can move on. I believe we've got an audit plan. Oh,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
And logically, this moves on to where the Stuart and the audit team are looking to actually focus for this year. So it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'll just share my presentation or Stuart's presentation on the screen.
Excellent.
Attached to. Into the computer and to you.
I can, no, sorry.
So just before you do this, okay, so Mr. Chair, it's a really good assessment that the audit has given to us for 23 to 24 and the high risk and interim for the secondary elements. I think we'll find a really nicely picked up in this process. So it's a nice linear approach. So yeah, sure.
Thank you, Stuart. So, as part of our planning for 2025, we've put together an audit plan that covers a number of areas of focus for our audit. And so they are the areas of focus are very consistent with what we've focused on during the 23-24, but obviously we expect some progressive development by management. One of the key things that management highlighted to us for this year is obviously, we're conscious that you have elections in October and that ideally the council will look to adopt their annual report prior to the council elections. Consequently, we are targeting to work the core year-end part of the audit through September so that we can come to this committee late in September or very early in October from an adoption or at least a recommendation to council to adopt the annual report. Now, that'll take increasing maturity from council. Obviously, there's been some delays historically, but you've got to keep sort of working forward. So the paper that you have in front of you today covers a number of different areas in regards to sort of key areas of focus, and I won't necessarily crawl through each of those individually, but infrastructure assets and rates are very much linked to the discussion we've been having earlier in the meeting. With infrastructure assets, it's twofold. First of all, it is actually the valuations and the work that management are undertaking to confirm more appropriate valuations for 30th of June 2025. But second of all, you have a significant capital projects program. And so the whole procurement through to capital expenditure, to the classification of that expenditure and the recognition of it in your financial statements represents a core part of what you do as an organisation, and it will represent a core part of what we do as auditors. So there's a lot of areas of focus in there. We look to sort of respond to that by understanding how you're gathering that financial information, validating that you've been expending it onto those projects that you are suggesting that you are, and then how it's ultimately recorded into the financial statements. We then have rates. Because this is the first year of a long-term plan, and we're involved in the audit of the long-term plan, we've probably come at rates for this year with a stronger understanding that we might do in a normal sort of annual plan year. Obviously, there was a few challenges within the adoption of the LTP or changes in regards to the rate setting that you undertook, but a lot of the and we're conscious of that, and we'll just sort of see how that's then sort of flowed through into the actual financial year. But also a lot of the challenges you had in the 23-24 year was actually more about billing as compared to applying the rates and then billing the rates as compared to actually sort of setting the initial rates. So we'll look at that entire process from end to end and obtain confidence. I'm not expecting the level of concerns that we had in the 23-24 financial year, but obviously rates is critically important to any council. Without it, you can't fund what you do. And then a couple of other sort of areas I'll touch on briefly. Non-financial performance information. You've adopted your LTP. You've got a new framework underneath that. There are certain things that are consistent, but there are certain things that have changed. You've got more into the swing of regular reporting against performance information, which is really good. And so we need to understand the processes supporting those. and the integrity of the ultimate reporting. And then probably the last one that I will actually touch on is grants and subsidies. With your capital works, you are dependent on significant funding flows, and you do have various different other streams of income that come into the organisation that are critical for your operations. So we're looking within the grants and subsidies and other revenue, essentially that you are recognising that appropriately, that when you incur work, incur capital work that's receiving funding from outside the region, that is being appropriately considered, appropriately billed and collected, and recognised in the financial statements. So sometimes there can be some timing challenges associated with that, but that's the objective of some of our core areas of focus. So probably I'm not going to do a total page flip. Happy to take any questions or queries. It's for me, it'll be the second year through your year-end process with West Coast Regional Council. Now you've got a far more consistent team this year than the team that took on the preparation of the annual report last year. I think they now know which rocks to look under and how to pull things together. And so looking forward to working through with management. And my core team remains consistent with last year as well, which will help everybody. So, take any questions from members of the committee.
Any questions of Stuart?
So one problem that arose recently in the last year was incorrect information from district councils given to us in valuation. Now, sort of clear points, how can we be sure that what they are giving us without going to expense an exorbitant expense to vet the information coming to us is not correct? It's a pretty near impossible thing to do. We're very reliant that information is provided without us having to go back and double check. Is it right or is it wrong? Because when we find out it's wrong, it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, the history has been that the valuations of each of the three districts have happened at different times, and that has been a challenge for the regional council. Rates should be set on the capital values, rental values that are in place across each of the districts as at effectively the date of the adoption of your rates resolution. So let's say that's 29th of June or 30th of June or something like that. So it's just about making sure that you get the latest data set from those councils, validate that with QV, and ensure that that is what is generating your rates calculations through your, when you maps up what you need in terms of rates, and then it is that rating information that's in the rating database when you do your billing, so you get consistency. So, and then, throughout the year, there's obviously updates to the database to people build houses or, complete houses or whatever it might be. But really the key is getting that right at the 30th of June when you pass on that resolution, making sure you've got the best and latest data set and just come and walk the lumps from each of the districts, and you get that the rating system and apply it.
One problem that has arisen, June's date to go with it, within a couple of weeks later, the CVs come out. And so therefore, we're between a rock and a hard place because the timing doesn't coincide to be helpful to the other.
And I mean, ultimately, you set your rates to generate the level of income that you need for your expenditure. And then if the GVs get updated 3 weeks afterwards, I mean, they will then get applied in the next financial year. So it's just ensuring that you don't get ahead of yourself, you don't rate on one set of GVs and then suddenly get a new set of GVs and build on the new set, because that'll upset the apple cart essentially. It's a bit of a challenging, and of course you could have ratepayers that'll get a bit confused because they'll get a rates bill possibly after they've just received some new rating valuations, and they go, well, hang on, that's a bit inconsistent. But the reality is, it's got to be really quite clear as to the day of the resolution as to what the valuations are in place.
If I could talk to it for a minute, Greymouth, I think, or Grey District is the one that's getting valued this year, is my understanding. My understanding is that's normally all signed off around February. So the auditor has actually signed off on their valuations, as far as I'm aware. And we do have downloaded a view of what that looks like from QV. So we already have that information available to us. Well, that comes from QV and it can be checked against the TLA file when that comes in. So we've got a bit more of a robust system around trying to manage that piece. The valuations change all the time. Someone adds a house or it's shared or it's, so some of those things will move along the way, but the big reevaluation should already be sorted from that point of view.
If I could just add in, Mr. Chair, I think we've learned quite a lot over the last couple of years, and particularly with the 23-24 process. And those lessons have been hard learned for everybody, but we've installed them into place. We've got more robust checks and balances as everyone would expect.
Any other questions at this stage?
Just one comment, I agree with the group manager, the grey valuations are around the moment. Everyone should have probably received their valuations so that early, which is great. And so that'll make quite a change. But if I could just go back to the valuation before we move that of the insurance valuation of the rock wall. One of the points I never made earlier on was that the concern to us, while the valuation might have been the replacement value, in the case of a loss of the event or complete destruction of the asset, the armour rock doesn't go anywhere. It actually, a lot of it is totally recoverable from the river. So it hasn't got the cost of actually Macquarie, and that in a lot of cases, a large percentage of that armour rock would be reusable and recoverable. So that's, I think, one of the points that, the staff need to take into account when they're looking at those valuations, that or talk to the valuers of those assets, that we're not losing the total like a house fire, like I said earlier on. A lot of that material is there and is able to be reused. In a lot of cases, the gravel is easily accessible from the adjacent river. So just a point there. Thank you.
Yes. Just a final comment from me, if I could, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thanks to Stuart and your team for working with us as you have done and the rest of this financial year. And your audit findings at your various levels really do speak to the journey that this organisation has been on, where 20 months ago, as the Chief Executive, when I arrived here, we did not have a finance team first. So we didn't have staff. Now, fast forward to today, we have a full complement of staff in the finance area, and so that's the journey we've been on. But then, secondly, 20 months ago, our systems were very challenged, particularly by a very low level of investment or update, or software licensing and all those sorts of things for at least 2 or 3 terms of council. And so with the challenge of a collapse of the systems, as well as no staff, I think has led to the legacies that we've been dealing with and that you've picked up in your audit findings. Now, as I said, we've got a complement of staff now, and I have full confidence in Peter's leadership and the finance team, but also, and I want to thank council and acknowledge the investment you've made in your LTP in those finance and other systems that actually make all this stuff work. And if you didn't know already, the investment in fully rebuilding our GIS system is a critical part of the rate system. Yeah. And so there's a complex web of systems issues here that need the rebuild, which is currently going on with Blair. Mr. Chairman, you heard about that yesterday.
Yes.
To make sure that the legacy issues that we're dealing with here can be appropriately done. Now, we're not going to be 100% perfect in all of these by 30 June, but we're going to be a hell of a lot way further down the track than when we'll get back. Thank you.
Just further before I move the recommendations that the GIS system also with the stop banks, because that'll be a logical another layer, which will give us the volumetric information and necessary there. So it all does integrate, just to double down on Daryl's comments. Page 9, we've got recommendations if there's no more discussion. They're listed there that we received a report, note the findings of the auditor, note the 16 recommendations of the auditor, accept the management responses to these recommendations, and note the proposed timeline and focus areas for the 24-25 annual report audit.
Happy
So
to move those.
We had mover and you're happy to second?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further comment? I'll put the motion. All those in favour,
Aye.
say aye. Against, if any, and no abstentions noted. Thank you. And thank you, Stuart, and I guess we'll see you next week at another location.
Oh, yes. Couple of things. First of all, conflict of interest, not conflict of interest. We look after Hastings District Council.
Which I chair.
But another slightly more serious point in terms of, it's not a conflict of interest, but I have been asked to take on the audit return responsibilities around Board District Council. So I'm just started last week working with them in regards to their consultation document for their LPP, because they're obviously on, as many district councils are, they're on a sort of 12-month deferred process. So just thought, you know, that role as an independent auditor's role on behalf of the Auditor General, like I have here, but obviously it's within the region, and yeah, you have interactions. I don't think it should cause any concerns at this stage.
No, I would second your comments there, and in fact, it's as normal if Audit New Zealand is the predominant supplier of audit services to the sector. It is quite normal for them to have multiple councils in local areas, because it does, in fact, deepen the knowledge base, which actually ultimately will improve audit quality.
Yeah, and my colleague Brendan from Christchurch office still looks after Grey and Westland. So they're working away at their respective consultation documents as we speak.
Excellent. Thank you, Stuart, and you're
Cheers.
welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting.
Move to a back table. Actually, elected representatives, a bit more space. Thank you.
Just moving to the public excluded. Motion page 51. I move that public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely agenda items 10 to 12, all inclusive, and that staff members Lou, Field, Mills, Jennery, Miller and Keeley are permitted to remain at this meeting after the public have been excluded due to their knowledge of subjects. That's on part 2 of the resolution.
Okay, sorry.
There, this knowledge will be of assistance in relation to matters being discussed. We have also our auditor, Stuart March, is permitted to remain after the public being excluded due to his knowledge of various subjects, and also the fact that the auditor has full and free access to all matters associated with the council, and that the minute taker is also permitted to remain. So we've got the items noted 10, 11, 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, 0.4, 0.5 and 0.6 are noted in the papers, in the public papers. So do I have a seconder for that? I've moved. Thank you, Councillor. If you can just.
Agree.
We're heading into.
It will be a moment.
Yes, we'll just go for it.
Live stream now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back live streaming. Just to report back that we have just left public excluded. There are no papers. Excuse us, gentlemen.
Online.
They're online. We've been through the public exclude, considered the papers, and there will be nothing that is released at this time. We also note, because of the time involved, that we had a lunch break during the public excluded session. There being no more business, I declare the meeting closed at 12:48.
No?
Yep.
Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Operations Committee, Tuesday, 18th of March of 2025. Call for any apologies. No apologies? You'd have to move that into declarations of interest. Anyone?
I think on item 3, regarding the Avery's. I just got that from.
Yep. Peter, you got the usual
Yep, I'll
declaration?
declare on Franz Joseph and on Greymouth, on both the public and public excluded sections.
You going to declare? No?
Probably that I can't remember.
You don't have to pass that, do we?
I think we should.
We think we should pass it?
Yeah.
I want to move that as a declaration.
Yeah.
Peter, you, thinking of Mark, was vote. Have we got a public forum today?
No.
Civil defence, so I'm just going to do their
They're
thing.
talking to their report.
Talk to the report. Right. Move on to the confirmation of the minutes. You take it, everybody's read the minutes? True and accurate account?
I'm happy to move, Chair, that
Move the
they
minutes.
minutes are true and correct record of the minutes, the 18th of February 2025.
Seconded Mark, all those in favour? So anything coming from the minutes? Anybody wants to discuss? All good, right, we'll move on to the actions list. Number 1. Orphan asset review, which is ongoing. We're all happy with that. Action 2, investigate the details about the funding availability for Wanganui, clarify on the status. It's ongoing. 14th of March is a paper today, is it? We're going to have a look. Meeting the other day. The Wanganui.
It's going to be on,
Action point 2.
through the chair, it's going to be presented at the 15th of April meeting.
15th, right?
Well done. The Wanganui rating scheme capital upgrade proposal to council is the same thing, 15th. Well done. Present a paper outlining the river mouse opening and the status ongoing. Right to NZTA regarding Waterara, regarding the developing situation at the true right of the Waterara Bridge is complete. Take that off. Provide a register of known orphan assets to councillors. It's ongoing. Take that as moved. Move that.
I'm happy to move that receive the report.
Moved, Andy. Second, Peter. All those in favour?
Aye.
Right. Chair's report. We did the closing down of the Raft Creek rating district, we put into abeyance, which all went really well. And I think it really was a good outcome for the rating district with the rising costs of insurance and bits and pieces. The Wanganui meeting, went to that. That had quite a good outcome as well, I feel. Was a lot of decisions made, but it was a good feeling amongst the crowd of people, and some good discussions were had. The other one was we went to the catchment group meeting Tamara Hall, the Waimea catchment group. It was a reasonably good turnout of people that were there. And I was really impressed with the effort that Shanti and Johnny Horrocks and the rest of the team put in. And I think we had a good outcome there as well. And the people that were there want to continue and probably get a proper catchment group scheme going together, have more meetings with possibly with some of the people who are a wee bit more vocal against what the gold miners do. But I think it was a really good start to get all the gold miners together and have a good discussion about what the way forward for it all. And it probably wouldn't hurt to get the forestry people involved as well, if possible, because they have paid a large contribution to the discoloration of creeks and catchment and stuff. Right. Next. Oh, move, cheers.
Yep.
Mark, seconded, Peter, Ewan, all those in favour?
Aye.
Right, a monthly catchment management report.
Yeah, so Tom is on a well-deserved for weeks of leave, so I'm going to be handling some of the papers today. So firstly, the monthly catchment report. I just want to reiterate Councillor Cummings' comments about the last two rating district meetings that I went to, which with other councillors, which was Rough Creek and Wanganui. And then, you know, I didn't get to a lot of them like all the staff and councillors have, but the reports that I've had back and some of the sentiments that you've shared is that we are winning back the trust and confidence of our rating schemes, which is some of our you know, key stakeholder relationships that we serve our communities across the West Coast. And that's because, you know, after, you know, trying to recover the organisation, having a finance function, understanding the finances, as well as getting on top of the work, employing new engineers, etc. I do think that we're not quite there yet, but we're well on the way to winning back trust and confidence with the schemes and servicing them in terms of the work. We've got only one left to go, which is the Westport Joint Committee, which is on 2nd of April. And we welcome Chris Cole as the new constituent councillor of that committee, as well as some other changes to the terms of reference and membership. And the papers are going out today for that. So yeah, a great effort, and I just want to pass my thanks on to the staff and councillors that have put a huge effort into those 23 annual meetings and all the work that goes into that. So thank you. Just going through the report, I'd just like to highlight and note some good work from Paulette Birchfield, area engineer for the central area, after the northern area and here at Remuneration, with the Cobden Cut and the annual trial of the knife gate and that sort of thing, as well as the opening of the new river mouth. So some great work there. Moving into Te Ramakau with the work that Arctic was doing with that rating scheme, and I can confirm that last Monday and last week contractors engaged on site and those sorts of things. And as I understand it, some of the rating scheme members are reasonably happy about what's happening there now after waiting for some time for that work to happen, which is some lining work as well as some low spots, etc. So that's good there. I just also want to, and look, we talked about it earlier today, the asset management project is going very well. It's continuing to be implemented and the new system adopted. And it's probably an update is that at the last regional CEOs meeting in Wellington, all of the regional CEOs adopted the nationally consistent asset management system on behalf of Te Uru Kahika, the Regional Council Collective for river and coastal assets. So all the regional councils are now working to the same system, and we're benefiting from that because a lot of the system documentation has been developed in the methodologies, etc., and condition assessment approaches. And it's now needing to build that in our GIS system, as we've talked about today, and through the different IT and other embedding it within our people and getting them out there doing the condition assessments. And asset inventory pickups, which takes us back into that audit thing we discussed today. So all interrelated here. In terms of natural hazards, that work program continues to move on. Of course, the big issue that the country is waiting for is the new MPS for natural hazards, which will could largely determine some of that work program into the future. But just noting, councillors, that we're about to take receipt or have taken receipt of a draft, and it's through peer review process, etc., from Geological Nuclear Sciences, which is a landslip study for the West Coast, which would be a critical part of discharging that once it's been through peer review and through this council to the district councils as part of LIMS, Land Information Memorandum. So yeah, I think that would be a fair summary of the paper, and happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Questions from anyone? Oh, I guess that's pretty good. It's a good sign, isn't it?
Yep.
We'll move the recommendation is just to receive the report. You'll move it?
Yep.
Mark, move it. Andy, all those in favour?
Aye.
Okay. Update from the West Coast Emergency Management Joint Committee. Our recommendation that the committee receive the report. We can do now if everybody's read it, and then we'll pass it over to Claire.
Happy to move that.
Move, Peter, second, Chris. All those in favour?
Aye.
Mr. Chairperson, just the presentation, what I'd like to the team members that we've got in the defence team. So Katrina Renshaw is the new emergency management officer for the Westland district. So she's working with Westland District Council on preparedness. And Paul Gurney is the emergency management officer for partnerships and lifelines. So he's working with all those really important organisations that we need to connect with over time. And as you'll see in the report, he's been doing some work around stock taking, all of the available assets and people and organisations that we can connect with, which I know has been a part of the conversation here previously. So do you want to take 1 minute to just introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. Katrina Renshaw, Glenwood. My name is Katrina. I have just moved to the West Coast. I have spent a little bit of time here in the past. Based in the Westland School, and I spent the last 2.5 years at the National Emergency Management Agency. So I'm very pleased now to be here, working at the community level and feeling like I can make a really positive change here on the ground.
And yes, Paul Gurney, 5 months into the role now. I just left police after a couple of decades in police on the West Coast and various other stations. And yeah, sinking my teeth into a lot of infrastructure and lots of cups of teas and coffees with all those in the critical infrastructure on the coast and further aboard at Lincoln. So it's a lot of work I'm finding with that role, and it's just building week on week, it seems.
So just you're doing the whole West Coast, Caramita House.
Yes.
Good job.
Okay. Kia ora koutou, everybody. So I'll just take you through my brief update. So this is an opportunity to give the committee an update from the joint committee meeting that we had back in February. It's a great opportunity to come and give you an update and overview of the work that the team is involved in across the region and also other aspects of work happening at a national level. So we hope to be able to present to you on a quarterly basis. In terms of my paper, key areas to update, aligning performance measures across the district councils and the regional council. So we have had some good conversations about how we have aligned levels of service across all of our councils. In the past, that work has happened on quite a one-to-one basis, and there hasn't been an alignment or consistent approach to what emergency management delivers on across the region. So this is the first attempt to try and align that over time. We've had some really positive uptake from a number of district councils around that happening. So I expect that in a couple of cycles, those levels of service should look very alike across all of the councils, the 3 district councils and the regional council. You've already been introduced to Katrina, so she's now on board, which is fantastic. At our last joint committee meeting, we also approved the appointment of Jess Curtis as the new as a new local controller for Buller District. So Jess is currently employed by the Buller District Council and has a long history also with Department of Conservation. So we're grateful to have her on board as another controller. Just in terms of the update with the co-location with us and FENS here in Greymouth, so that work is continuing. They have lodged another consent with the Grey District Council, and the next step is to complete the tender process to engage contractors. So that's about the office being co-located with FENS at their expanded offices down in Greymouth. So that work continues to be underway. So watch that space. In terms of the group plan, so all of the 16 groups across the country has a plan, and ours is currently being reviewed. So we are well underway with that work. We are looking to have that available for public admission mid-year before it goes back to the minister to approve. Work's well underway. Capability and development. What I did is I attached this year's training program to my report. It's a one-pager which just gives you an indication of the types of programs that we are running throughout the year and where those are taking place. As you can see, it's a very busy and active training year that we have already commenced on. I just want to flag also that there's a number of exercises in there as well. So we continue to practice what we do and test what we do with a range of other organisations as well. So that's around capability and development. Lifelines and critical infrastructure. We introduced you to Paul, who's been involved in a great area of work around enhancing our connections to our critical infrastructure agencies. What I've also done there is I've just added a couple of pictures to set out the range of resources that are now in the coast or underway to get onto the coast. So one of those projects is around obtaining 5 fuel tanks that were coming from Hawke's Bay, and they are on their way or soon to be on their way down to the region. We've had some great cooperation from the likes of Kiwi Rail, who has supported us with funding the cost of those tanks coming over the Cook Strait. So it's a great example of collaboration and teaming up across a number of agencies. So it's quite exciting. And those are the highlights really of the report. Very happy to answer any questions or expand on any of those points. The recommendation is to receive the report.
So anybody got some questions? I heard. Anyone else got some questions? You want to go first? I was just going to ask Claire in here on page 29. It says the fund for fuel pumps to assist with fuel extraction when there is no internet coverage.
Yes, that's correct.
So what sort of extraction stuff are we talking about?
So I might ask Paul if that's okay, to expand on that point. Paul?
Yes, just in a nutshell, we just mentioned had the generator program for our fuel station, petrol station on the coast. So if we lost power, we have generators that can plug in to get those going. That led to a conversation with the fuel company saying, well, you might have power, but if you don't have internet, you still won't have fuel. So that's led to how to get that fuel out. If the tanks are built in the ground, we can open up that hatch. If we had purpose-built pumps to get that fuel out, we'll still have access to it. If we don't have those, we'll be jury-rigging a system of some sort.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I was wondering. Yeah. So you don't need the internet to get the fuel out. You're going to bypass the internet.
We can bypass it if we don't know it's there.
Right. Just one other one on the bottom of page 29. You've got consider repair for of hazards. That's a bit of a typo. Peter?
Just one matter there, with the enhanced evacuation planning
Yes,
for those major towns on the state highways, which is good accessibility. I'd hate it to fall off the radar, but one that would have multiple hazards getting to and from an event or events, and would have a sizable, any given time population would be Okarita.
Okarita,
We should have that in mind too, because got a history historically of tsunamis, but the lagoon, we've got flooding issues just in the access.
yes,
Could be quite a problem area that may be overlooked.
yes, yes, okay, well, we'll definitely take that on board, and Katrina is beginning to expand to connections with Okarito as well, so we're doing quite a bit of work around Franz, so I think it's a good opportunity to connect in with Okarito as well, and that big.
It's not a question, it's just really as, West Coast Regional Council member on the West Coast Emergency Management Joint Committee. I personally feel we made great progress, in the last couple of years, and I'm pleased to see the generators, the emergency fuel storage facility, and we've got great staff. And I'd just like to thank Claire and the team for the work involved in emergency management, getting prepared for an event we don't want to happen on the coast sometimes. But it's really good. I feel we're in really good hands now. I definitely notice a big improvement over the last, and thank the team.
I've just got another question for you. The TerraCat generators, who pays for them?
So the TerraCat generators came as a result of an application that we did through NEMA, so they're all paid for. So we currently maintain them as a regional council asset. So we have them on included in the CAT maintenance program across the region.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Next question was, you say you have a fund for, a fund to run all this. I mean, is it just going to be done by TerraCat? Is it just
in terms of maintenance?
In terms of maintenance, I'm just thinking as we get more and more stuff, that the maintenance is going to go up and up and up. And
we definitely have to take that into account in terms of how that's organised. Obviously, it's awesome to get a number of resources into the region, but how we look after them, how we maintain them, test and exercise them, that's up to us to manage. At the moment, we have been able to absorb those costs into our current funding, which continues to be the case. We haven't had to look for anything extra.
I was just wondering if we should be approaching corporate structures for maintenance.
It's always an option, and I think as Paul's role develops in terms of having a stronger connection to a range of the private business on the coast as well, then we're always looking for how we can team up and work across the business sector as well. We're pretty early days in that, but I think we're building a stronger foundation.
Because I think if you had a base cost, we could go to say TerraCat or Cable Price or someone who else is around the place and just.
Yes, that's it. That's good for it.
Yes.
That was a soft touch.
Good point.
Just Chair, even on a simpler basis, fuel will start to degrade over 12 months. If you could arrange with a corporate that was going to use that fuel anyway, you could refresh the fuel.
Yes.
At virtually no cost to them.
No cost to you as well.
That would be possibly something you'd approach or West Roads or West Reef or someone like that. Who would take it, refuel it, someone that uses a lot of fuel.
Have we got an electric?
I would need, I'm pretty sure we've investigated that, but I would need to come back to confirm that. I think the question is, does the country have the resource in terms of being able to airlift? Because we need to appreciate that anything that's able to get in the air will be a national asset as well, particularly if it's a large event.
These are going to be strategically placed, though, aren't they? They're not going to be.
So they're currently within each of the districts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that they are spread across.
Yeah. Okay.
Through the chair, the other aspect about the tanks that we're going to receive from Hawke's Bay, we've already identified who will maintain those and keep them, that fuel turned over. So Paul's also already connected in with health. Who are the other organisations? Health.
We've got Buller District Council, Western District Council, with Airport and Coatiga will be getting one. Health here and Brainbuck will be getting 2 tanks. Very keen to set up 2 of those. So those tanks are coming basically free from the Hawke's Bay, the ex-Cyclone Gabrielle. Literally brand new, coming down. They're worth quite a lot of money. The councils and I hope the airport will keep those going and turning the fuel over as an ongoing expense for themselves and not on us. Yeah. But we'll have an MOU with them that in times of need, we'll have first access to that.
One more question. So we're going to be covering petrol, Jet A1 and diesel, are we? Or was there, you got a core fuel you're going to be using or supply?
So these tanks are diesel.
All diesel.
All tanks are diesel, right.
Note through the chair, there's one, 2 15,000 litre, 1 5,000 and 2 2,500 litre tanks.
The range. Because that's something you're going to rely on the helicopter companies to keep their avgas, because that's going to be one of the big ones for a start. If that's a point. That's clear. Anyway, other questions are clear? So the recommendation is to receive the report. Is there a mover? Andy? Thank you, Mark. Or Peter? All those in favour?
Aye.
Yeah, that's, I'll reiterate what Peter was saying. Since I've been on the council, the silver fence has come along a long way in 6 years, 3 years.
I've also.
Mr. Chairman, at this point, can I just apologise and say that presenting the monthly report, I didn't turn my page, and there was a couple of things that were online for that wanted to talk. I really wanted you to hear from them in the monthly report. I wonder if we could return to that item. So apologies for that. Firstly, we have Peter Blackwood online, and I think it'd be really good for the committee to hear a monthly update on Westport from Peter, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. And then we'll go to Scott Orr, who's also online, just about the IRG projects before we go public excluded on those commercials and other things. So sorry, I didn't turn the page, but out of practice on my Tom, so thanks. Peter, how are you today?
Volume, Peter.
Hang on.
It's at his end.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thank goodness. Kia ora, councillors, kia ora, chair, kia ora, senior staff and others. This is the Westport Flood Scheme monthly report update. I'm not going to read everything, but I'm going to add some things too. So there's very many parallel tasks in both the design and construction field, and the parallel tasks in the design field have multiplied. I'll come to that. Okay, McKenna Stop Bank. This is the one you'll be all keen about. Construction has gone very, very well. Very few hiccups there at all. and it's nearing completion, and it was forecast for completion by the end of March. So that should be very, very soon. It has turned out to be a very good stop bank. The mix of the gravel has set very, very well, and would have a high confidence in that stop bank. We're just deciding whether or not we will put some overlays around it to prevent underground seepage, but it's still uncertain on that point, but we'll know soon. Okay, the Buller River upstream of State Highway 67. Won't talk about the first two. The further 2D modelling. We had to commission 2D modelling of the bridge because we've got this real difficulty with the Carter's Beach stop bank, that whenever we shut out water from the town, while most of it goes back to the river, some of it goes to Carter's and adds to flooding there. So we've been looking at options for Carter's. They were very dear and they've gradually come down, as I've explained, but started at 10 and we're down to, I think, about 4.7 now. But that option elevates flood levels at the bridge by 7 centimetres. So the only option we had left was to remodel it. We always believed the initial model was a bit conservative in the benefits of some mitigation options, namely removal of downstream abutments of the old bridge, both sides. So we're now modelling that in 2 dimensions. That meant that the model had to be recalibrated because a 2D model is different from a 1D model. That has been done, so I'm expecting some answers very soon. Once we have those answers, then we'll know more about options for mitigating flood risk at Carter's. GHD consultants, they've been largely supervised by Jordan Mandry on this. They've completed the initial geotechnical investigations, the Upper Buller Reach. So now we're into the seepage modelling and stability analyses. And so we had to select some critical cross sections. And the most critical cross section is where the stop bank is highest at 3.6 metres. That's highest for the entire scheme. It is highest not because the stop bank has a hump there, but because the ground level is low, because that is a relic flood channel from past times. And so that needs very, very careful geotechnical assessment. Even though it's high, it may be a bit costly around there, but it might need to have a flatter batter or other specialist geotechnical treatment. And we have always said, even before the days of when other people reported on us, we've always said that we would do a thorough geotechnical job on these stop banks, and we certainly will. Okay, floating lagoon. So first we'll talk about the Bundit tallies. The ground penetrating radar survey has been completed and it is being discussed between the chap who did it and WSP and ourselves. So that work has been completed. It's still a bit uncertain what will happen with that bund. It may be able to stay there. It mightn't be able to stay there. WSP are being commissioned to look at, they've come up with about 5 different options there. And so probably within a couple of months, we'll know a bit more about that. One of the options may even be a wooden wall on the downstream side to full height. That would not interfere with the operations of the harbour master and everyone else around there, because the harbour master was pretty upset when talked about maybe taking this bund down. Or there are other options to keep it at its current height and to stabilise that. So that's in the area of WSP using their specialist geotech guys to look at that. While I am on that, with your permission, CE, I'm going to add 3 other tasks that we're embarking on. Is that okay, Daryl? Because it's relevant to this meeting. Okay, so we've got our skates on. That's the only way I can describe this. I've always felt this has been a slippery slope, this task, but it's going well, and it's a task that needs a lot of care, and we are giving it due care, very, very due care. Okay, so the section from Tally's building to the State Highway 67 bridge is a complex area. And so we are engaging WSP to do a scoping report on solutions there. We'll need a lot of consultation with the people there. We've already spoken to the people next door to Tally's who have the barge, and I'm sorry, I can never remember their name.
Western Mineral Sands.
Western Mineral Sands, thanks. Thank you so much.
And through the chair, Peter, we're in open part of council. We're in the public part.
Yeah, I'll be careful what I say. I have got other names, but I won't say them. Yeah, very careful what I say. So it is quite a tricky bit, and we were originally going to do that a bit later, but just as well, we're doing a concept scoping report at present, and that will set the way for the future to really hoe into it next financial year. Then the rest of the floating lagoon. Davis Ogilvy have been really, really focused on Avery, so not much has happened here recently, except we've been doing a contamination survey to determine extensive contamination, and we've put out a purchase order to do some more detailed stuff and do the DSI and everything else, because it was an old railway track and there are hydrocarbons and other contaminants there. So that needs looking at. Right. Avery's. We've battled away on Avery's, and we are expecting the final civil and geotechnical design and plans this Thursday. We have a meeting on this Thursday for that. We were going to exclude waters at the big Avery's culvert by a flood wall, about 1.8 meters high, but we've decided, well, that can be stabilized, and it had a very, very good method for avoiding overturning or sliding by use of piles and other things. Engineers in this country are now really concerned after what happened to Edgecombe about underflow. So we have decided on the basis, and this is late in the piece, we have decided on the basis of engineering safety and cost that we will construct a stop bank alongside the road through there. Construct over the culvert. Means 3 more culvert sections, but that's okay. That'll still be cheaper than the wall. Prior to that, we've been striving to minimize the intrusion into the coastal marine area, because that is bad. And when it's unavoidable, then it's a compromise and appropriate mitigation. So we've been striving to reasonably mitigate that, but we still needed to intrude about 2,000 square meters. And by putting this culvert, there's another 200, or this stop bank, it's another 280 square meters. So Laura Cole, who conducts our environmental consultation and tangata whenua consultation, has been in regular contact with the tangata whenua, and we're progressing that, I think, very satisfactorily. They've certainly will be doing their rights for their final say, but I think it's pretty good consultation, and everyone understands what we're doing and what mitigatory mechanisms might be needed, like for example, walkways up and over the bank so people can access the estuary there, a couple of those, and need to have close involvement of the tangata whenua in our planning processes. So I think that's going really well. Right. So that's Avery's. We're planning to pre-purchase this culvert as a separate from the construction program, and possibly pre-purchase another culvert slightly upstream. That's not part of the quick wins. Right. While we're in this area, I'll also mention we've commenced investigations on the North End stop bank. We're currently doing a scoping report for what for what geotechnical investigations we need. And we're doing that alongside stop bank near Easton's Road. So those are the additions to this report that happened since this report, but they'll be in the next report, but it's worthwhile mentioning them, I think. Carter's Beach, yeah, we're down to, is it 4.7 million now? With a 0.07 impact at the bridge. And it of course has an impact on flood levels elsewhere too, a similar amount or less, or the same actually. I hope we can go with this option because I've seen the recent media release on the adaptation fund, and this helps that problem. There's 3 of the houses that we can't practically protect are protected by this option that was mooted by Stuart Challenger of Coles. So that's Carter's. Like, we're waiting with bated breath to engage with the community, but we're not quite ready yet. When we know a bit more. And Snodgrass, we had a very intensive period for Snodgrass last 2 periods, and we're flat out on everything else, and we're catching our breath on Snodgrass, and that's also being assessed by Buller under the adaptation fund. Hopefully I haven't said anything controversial. I've tried to be very careful here. There is nothing controversial. Okay, that's my report.
Very good. Okay, any questions for Peter?
Yeah, Peter. Oh, just, Peter, thank you for that, comprehensive report and behaving yourself. It's great. Just, were we hoping still to, get that construction for Avery's out round May? Is that still?
Yeah, May, June.
Right. Yep.
May, June.
Perfect.
We're definitely
Thank
going to
you.
have it. The plan is to get it commissioned this year, this financial year, with or without a resource consent, but I've got hopes on the resource consent too. There's a slight problem that when you put that stop bank there, water accumulates behind it that comes across from the floating lagoon.
Yeah.
And so for a short period of time, it will have that water, but we're pretty close to understanding that, and I don't think that will be a big problem, but that was a bit unexpected. Yeah. Yeah.
So sorry, look, I've got to say, given we're live streaming, we won't be progressing anything without a resource consent, please.
Yeah, no. I did not say that, but I said we may call tenders and award.
Oh, I see, the tendering. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Certainly, I would not build something without a resource consent. Sorry about that.
Peter, I've got a question for you. When you talk about the culvert at Avery's and that one up the road, are they a pipe in the ground or are they a proper concrete structure?
They'll be proper concrete culverts. One of them is 3.15 by 1.5 box culvert.
Yeah. Oh.
And the other one, well, actually the flow through the other one is actually more from
concrete surround around.
Oh yeah. Oh, I have that. A proper mitigation structure for the outlet velocities and a proper structure for providing access to there as well. And of course it'll have floodgates.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. There'll be 2 floodgates. There would be a vertical point in the middle of the outlet with two floodgates there.
Any other questions, Peter?
Not really questions through the chair, just comments. There's a couple other outlines working through as well, Peter. McKenna's Road and Elsie Road and Stevens Road.
Yeah. We're continuing design on that bit through there, and we've been. Thank you. I should mention that wasn't in our report. But, with the assistance, particularly of Councillor Mark, we have been discussing with the landowners the impacts on them and how to mitigate them, and that's progressing, I think, very well. There were, was it 11 to 14 properties we cannot protect?
Yeah.
And there are two in Excelsior Road that do suffer increased flood levels in a 1% AEP current. There's a third one that has a minor increase in a 1% AEP with climate change, but I don't think we're including that in the
Well,
issues.
we might move on from there, Peter. We'll move on to Scott. So Scott can do his report.
Thank you.
Keep things moving along.
I've still got this one. Moving on to Scott's. Unless,
This is in public.
Yeah.
yeah, we've got some public, there's got public bits and then public.
That's right. So we've got that. And so Scott, is there anything you want to say in this public part of the meeting about the IRG project?
Well, through the chair, we have got those stage one and brands and that
Yeah.
as in the public part.
Yes, we've still got 8.3 management
That's right.
approach to non-council
Oh, I see.
managed flood and
Yep.
coastal assets.
9.1.
We'll go to that.
Through the chair, do you want me to go through each of the reports, or do you want me to just highlight the overall key sections for you?
Just the highlights. Sounds good to me.
Okay, cool.
We'll
So
come back to that. All right.
Excuse me, that report scares me.
Peter's report.
No, we still need to do 8.3.
So I'll move that.
Peter's report.
We did that one, that was 8.1. We just went back to 8.1. We've done 8.1, we've done 8.2. We've actually up to 8.3 now. Management approach to non-council managed flood.
Moved you then.
Yes, we have. So sorry, Scott, we're not quite up to you yet, I don't think.
Okay. No
Sorry,
problems.
we're
All
up
good.
to 8.3, management approach to non-council managed flood and airborne coastal assets.
Well, I think Daryl was trying to dodge this.
Sorry, sorry, Darryl.
Right, so the recommendations, we'll do this for a start, is receive the report, note the approach staff have adopted to respect the orphan flood coastal protection assets. So someone want to move that? Peter Ewan, second Andy, all in favour?
Yep.
All right.
So thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Kevin, for joining me on this one, because this is something that all the councils around the country have dealt with or are dealing with on an ongoing basis. So firstly, we do understand that we have rating districts and flood schemes that are administered by us. The assets are vested in us. Some of them we're building now, some of them were built back in the days of catchment board days with Ministry of Works in the West Coast 3-to-1 subsidy, but there's schemes that we administer and we understand that, and that's all under the 1941 Act. There is another class of flood protection and drainage assets out there which we've got clearly nothing to do with. That's local farmers or local landowners dropping their own bits of rock in, getting a consent sometimes, doing their own drainage work and those sorts of things for the consent if needed, and nothing to do with us apart from our regulatory function where we assess any consents and effects of the environment and also capacities and all those sorts of things. What we're talking about here is a third class of asset where there is conjecture or it's unclear through history whether the assets are actually were administered or owned by the catchment board, now the regional council. So that's an area that needs to be unpicked and sometimes worked through to establish the state of those assets. And in the paper, I talk about the history here. So there was a class of funding that used to come through from the Wesca to the catchment boards called catchment works. So it wasn't to build a scheme that the catchment board would administer as a proper scheme vested in the 41 Act. It was simply a sort of a bit of a funding line from government through the catchment boards out to landowners who do a bit of work, often assisted by the catchment boards, and they would do that, but it was never owned or administered or maintained by the catchment boards. It was simply a community benefit that would help a lot of the times in those days farmers either protect their land through flood protection or drain the land, through the drainage schemes, but never administered or owned by the the catchment board of the time and then flowing on to the regional council. And it's often that class of work that is the subject of conjecture and who owns it. Now, in the report, I outline a procedure that we are going to adopt to work through any of those assets that are in that category. And some banks that absolutely spring to mind that need this approach taken to right now is the reefed-in banks. Because that community, as I understand it, it's just not clear who owns those banks, you know, and where they come from. So we will work through all of that, and we've already started to do some of that and go back in the old records. So look, this is a operational procedural matter. What I also want to say though is, and I want to go back to one of the action points. I don't want councillors to expect that we're going to deploy a whole lot of staff, all of our staff, off all their work and go and scour the countryside and walk all the rivers and try and find these things. That's not a good use of resource. What we'll do, and so we might need to either get rid of that action or amend it. What we do know, though, is that there are some assets that have got some question marks. We'll apply that and bring it back to this table, apply the methodology back to this table. And as we find assets that have got this question mark over them, we'll apply the methodology. And in that way, we will just work through in a systematic way any of these issues. So that's the report. I just want to invite if there's anything words of wisdom you want to add from all of your work, probably apply some of this as well.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Probably just the subtlety, the difference between ownership and responsibility. They're actually different things potentially. And we just highlight that on page 36 of your agenda, page 3 of the papers, paragraph where it points out some situations where the council may not own an asset, but it might have the responsibility by virtue of the way it's conducted itself in terms of maintenance and activity. So those two things are different and are very important to make that distinction when we're thinking about assets and how we manage them.
Yeah, that's correct. And if I could just comment on that, and that's been a particular issue even for this council, but let's just say that we don't own the asset, but let's just say that we, through the goodness of our heart, do some design work or supervise some construction on or do some work ourselves on that asset. By virtue of doing that work, even though we don't own it, we can attract liability. And councils will well know what that means for us.
Or adverse to liability.
Through the chair, I can think of a local example which has popped up recently. Some of these ones you don't need to go and look for, they'll come and find you. And one I think obviously a Carey River outlet of John Rogers. It's got a little bit of rock work there that's virtually was done in the late 78, somewhere about there.
Yeah.
It's actually got, disappeared. So they might come back. Yeah. But I take on board that liability issue. Do we help them or do we tell them?
So the last point that I'd make on all of this, which is really important, if somebody alleges that, hey, this is our asset, or we should have this or whatever, or we did it, or they don't want to do it, but we should continue to do it or something like that. Unless there is a established scheme with targeted rates, we don't do anything. Okay. So just remember our funding policy and our LTP. If we're going to do something, it's through a scheme with targeted rates and it's 100% user benefit funded. Okay, which means that the people down in Franz Joseph don't go and pay for a bit of rock work on a farm up Buller somewhere, right? So that's the funding policy that we've got. And if a community or landowner or a group of landowners want to approach us for a scheme, we would need to consider that. But all of that needs to come back through here, and I take you through what councillors Campbell and Cummings we did on Thursday, where Raft Creek dissolved, because if it's only 1 or 2 landowners or 6 landowners, really that's not what a targeted rate and flood scheme set up to do with all the overheads that would need to go with it, the health and safety, all that sort of. So there's a bit of stuff to work through there, and we want to work through those issues. We'll work through them in a really collaborative way with the community, but there's some checks and balances in there for us all, I think.
Just another class of structure and stuff that's been put in there by other government departments, either Ministry of Works, Railways, Transit, that they were put in there and since forgotten about. People initially see them as a river protection asset, not looking for an old bridge or whatever, and they still think that it's a current. That's probably, as far as I can see, that's probably the worst kind, because they look at the government did it, so we should be doing it. You know, that's, you know, Andy.
Yeah, that's good. Like, are we going to just include Waltham assets on a rating scheme? River or other, like for instance, we got the White Harbour River that's got structures that's been built or helped built by the catchment board, but it's still safe to stand in the regional council. I don't think the regional council's ever had anything to do with maintaining structures and that. I don't think the regional council would have had anything to do with the White Harbour.
Well, you look at some of the structures, like on the Arahura and that was all done by the Western District Council to protect their road. And that's quite a sizable structure if you drive up the south bank of the Arahura River. There's a lot of rock going on there, which obviously the District Council paid for. It's not on our scheme. Then you've got all the stuff down by the main Arahura Bridge, which used to be part of the protection was for the older Arahura Bridge, the railway bridge, and now it's all just fallen into the river. So there's a whole lot of weighing up to do, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's a whole lot of assets on rivers. Are we going to class them as orphan assets, or are we going to forget about this?
I honestly think we probably need to wait till we're approached myself. I mean, we can't, as they're all saying, we can't run around and claim everything. It's they'll come to light when people start getting nervous about them. So and that's when it's probably the best time to really action it.
I'll point you. So councillors, I just want to remind you that we have a procedure that's documented of how we're going to deal with each of these things when they come and find us in the paper, and that's what we're going to apply. And we will report back on all of those matters to this table as we work through any of all of those assets.
All clear?
All clear. Any more questions for Darryl? Well, we've moved it, the seconded it. So we'll move on to Scott's first paper, Prince Joseph Stage 1 operations. The recommendation is to receive the report, so we've got a mover. Chris, second Peter.
I won't. I won't.
Oh, you're not allowed to?
You're not allowed.
Oh, Peter, other Peter.
Peter.
I wasn't even talking to you.
I'll take
Cool.
Okay, Scott.
Cool, thank you. Through the chair, probably key things for Fran Stage 1 is just the issuance of the survey documentation, which highlighted a couple of low points on the new banks, which are going to be remediated by the contractor. That then informs a few other things in terms of the as-built documentation, etc., but also ties into helping us sort out the final account in terms of the final quantities. Other works that we've got going on there, we just need to complete some small amount of fencing at the heliport. That's just on conclusion of the works on the bank. And then we're also working through with Tetra Tech Coffee around some resolution or some options for the dealing with the stormwater issue. Tetra Tech have gone back, reviewed that, they've coming back, they should have them this week with some options for us to be able to put some costings on to basically to be able to resolve that. The other item obviously is around the NZTA, which when Tom's back, we're arranging a meeting to catch up with them with regards to their funding contribution and their section of the bank on the south side as well. So the other key things that are remaining to close out Stage 1. Yeah, hopefully we will be in a better position to have that updated next month. We also had a catch up with Peter Miller and the finance team just around reconciliation of all the transactions, etc. And we're getting on the same page there in terms of that, in terms of all the expenses to date. So yeah, look, we're in that project closeout phase, but yeah, working well to get that resolved.
Got any questions for Scott on this one? Okay, we'll move on to the next one from Scott.
What order have you got?
Um,
1, 2.
1, 2,
9.2, yeah. Mine's-
Frame stage 2.
So frame stage 2. Okay, key highlights there is that we have received from Teach Check some advancements of the design there for the first 3 sections. So the first 3 sections being the lined rubbish dump stop bank, the unlined section of the rubbish dump stop bank, and the Milton and others repair. So we have all of those. We are intending to meet with the as part of the conditions with the Joint Committee Working Group. Information was sent to them prior to Tom going on leave. And I think we're meeting either the 2nd or the 3rd of April to go through those.
Any questions for Scott on that one? Okay, so the recommendations are to receive and review the report, provide any feedback or queries via the West Coast Regional Council Capital Works Project Manager, which is Tom.
Just make one question.
Oh, yeah.
What was the completion date on stage 2?
On stage 2?
Yeah.
Look, depending on when we get the full go ahead, we have to commence the works prior to June. But providing we get a good run at it, we've put a date in September this year. And hopefully if we get a clear run, I think the difficulties we may enter into are things around the Havels Bank and progressing there. So, but other than that, I think September is achievable.
It should be completed 24.
So in your risk register, do you think that non-starting on time could be a major concern? Because that's depending on the funding, isn't it? I mean, it's got to be started by June, doesn't it?
I don't think it's a major. I think the first package of works, as I said, we've got the drawings ready to go. It is a matter of then getting into tender and proceeding, and I think that June is comfortable. But yes, it is something that is always in the back of our mind of making sure the works start before June.
You're comfortable with that,
Yeah, I am, councillor Son. I'm really confident that we'll be at the start line. That's required by Kānara Minister before 30 June, well before that, in terms of getting the diggers working down there on Rubbish Bank. The real issue is working through with the joint committee down there and the community members and our colleagues at Western District Council around any works on the other side has been the real issue. Yeah, but look, if the feeling of that community is they don't want that, well, that we'll work through it. Thanks.
Okay. Move, just
yeah, we just need to move.
move it.
Yep.
So receive the review the report. Mover, Chris.
Yeah, I'll move. Is that stage 2?
Yep,
Stage 2, yep. And provide the feedback queries to our West Coast Regional Capital Works Project.
So who's the mover? Do the mover
Chris.
just a second? Thank you very much.
God, you're quiet.
Sorry, Peter.
Righto. All those in favour? Righto, we'll move on to the next one. Graham F Operations Committee project status.
Yeah, so stages 1 and 3 are practically complete with the defects being closed out. We also have had the power pole relocation complete, so now we're in the process of doing the final accounts for those sections of the work. the only sections that remain to be completed are the section at WMS. So from that perspective, where all other works are complete within those stages.
Yeah.
So the Remuneration received report. Has anybody any questions about this particular paper in regards to the Western Mineral Sands?
Would be offline.
Yeah, could I just make sure I sent councillors an email? We've got a public excluded item on that matter coming up once we move into
Public excluded. I've just got one more question that people have asked me is what's the stage if the money comes in for doing the next lot of walls? Like it looks really odd down there in Preston's Road, and you've got one side quite high and the other side's quite low. Is it the next one to do, or is it Cobden or?
No, so that'll all depend on the tranche 2 funding.
Tranche 2 funding.
Yeah.
And so it's all going to be one go after that, is it? Or
correct. Yeah, and you can do those in any order. And depending on the resource, you could do Cobden, which is stage 5, at the same time as you do stage 2 or stage 4. So yeah, that'll depend on resource at that time.
Because the people of Blaketown are asking questions.
Yeah.
It's quite obvious. Anyway, I'll move on.
Let's do need to move that one.
Move that one, receive the report. Chris moves it. Second, Peter.
Peter Young.
Peter
Yeah.
Young. Page next one.
Okay.
Open ticker. Open ticker on page 76.
Cool. So stage 1B, again, contractors worked well on closing out the defects. The survey information's been received and been reviewed. Part of that also informs we've got to provide cross sections to Kiwi Rail as part of the resource consent condition. So that's being reviewed and will be sent to Kiwi Rail for their review as well. There's also been some discussions with the operations team, particularly Jordan, in relation to whether we need to install a couple of additional head walls on the stormwater outlet. So we're working through to resolve that in 2 locations. And yeah, pretty much the rest of the defects are complete in regards to stage 1B. Stage 3. Sorry, I was just going to say stage 3, we've just progressed with developing up a program with regards to the design and the stakeholder engagement for stage 3. Also just noting, doing a little bit of further that will be progressed as well at the same time during that program.
Just losing you there for a minute, Scott. That's all right. So we're going to move to receive the report.
Oh, happy to move that one. Yep.
Sorry.
You ready?
All right. Second and Andy, all those in favour? You're breaking up a wee bit there, Scott, that's all. Can you hear us? Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's pretty much us, this meeting finished.
It is. Have general business?
Any general business? Oh, I was just going to phone that.
Just through the chair, just the last meeting I just brought up about the ownership of the Haast River. Still working through that project. One of the landowners down there's want to know about the Department of Conservation actually charging gravel for out of there. So just clarification from the staff on that. You know, I think Tom was working on that.
Yeah. Look, I don't have an update from Tom. Could we make sure that that's an action attributed to Tom, and we'll get him to come back on that when he's back from that.
Haast River.
Yeah.
Haast River.
Through the chair, we've got a little bit of information on that back then. I can supply that quite quickly.
Oh, really good. We'll take that action out there.
Okay.
Councillor Cole can supply that. That'd be fabulous.
Yeah. It'd be great if you could copy that to Tom as well.
So, yeah.
Any other general business? Andy? Peter? Peter? No general business? Righto. Well, we'll move the meeting into public excluded for the reasons of being 11.1, 12.1, 13.1, 13.2, 14.1, 14.2. And we will keep here Chantel Mills, Gavin Palmer, Joe Field, Scott Hall will be permitted to remain, and the minute taker.
That's probably need to add, Matt
Happy to
Bevan.
move that. Move it.
Let's add Matt Bevan.
Matt Bevan as well. Oh, yeah. Brandon Miller, Jim Slade. Yep. Peter Miller.
Peter Muller,
Yep. Okay.
So I'll move that.
You'll move that?
and that was.
Yeah,
So,
I'll see it. Yep.
perhaps,
Public excluded meeting, and now we're going to close the meeting for the Operations Committee. 10 to 3.
already.
Welcome councillors and those that have joined us on live stream to the Remuneration Employment Committee meeting of the 18th of March 2025. We're starting late because we had other meetings today. It's now 2:55. So I'll call for apologies. We haven't got any apologies. There's no one missing here today. Any declarations of interest of anyone? No. If that's the case, I'll move that we'll go into public excluded because the items that be discussed today are confidential to the township. There isn't. No, there isn't. So I'm actually asking today that everyone be excluded from this meeting except the CEO Darryl Liu and Graham McGlynn. Our have asked to stay our risk and assurance 4:48, and I will officially close the meeting today and thank councillors. 3:48. Oh well, wait at 3:48. And I thank councillors for the long day we've had on the 4 meetings we had today, and thank you, Graham, for attending the meeting today. Thank you all.